Oh, it is a little warm. I'll go ahead and get that taken care of. Well, guys, welcome back to Open Water Night 3. Tonight is Scuba Olympics, all kinds of fun and exciting things to do. So, again, I'm your instructor, Benjamin Hatfield. Today, I get to come to you with a new title that I'm very proud of. So, as of last week, I was just a dive master instructor. This week, I'm an assistant instructor trainer. So, I got to go through and do all the skills I'm teaching you at instructor level quality, plus take an exam that was substantially harder. But I walked out of the exam. I'm sorry. I'm very disappointed in myself. I only got a 99% on everything. So I missed a question. I was like, darn, so mad. I tried hard to make my class proud. But anyway, I'm very excited that moved up the ranks, and I was invited to the instructor trainer seminar in October in Cozumel, which is not supposed to happen. I'm not at that point where I should be invited to it, but because I got a 99% and I did well, they invited. I'm the one person, the only AIT that was invited. Everybody else has to be a master instructor or better. So I'm very excited. So anyway, my wife was here a minute ago. She's actually over there. She won't be helping with class tonight. She's busy chatting with other people and doing Nikki things. So she won't be assisting us tonight, but still around for questions as well. We still have our dive guides at the back, and we have a new one today. Where'd Aaron go? Okay, he needs to come in here. So my dive guides and I talked about it, and we would really like to make sure we get a little in the pool a little earlier tonight and give you guys a little bit more opportunity. Here's why. Tonight is I hate to say this in a bad way, but tonight is the hardest night we're going to go through, but it's the most important. Everything we've been doing has been building up to tonight. It's exciting, so be excited with me, because tonight is the big deal skills, but they're not hard, right? They're mostly common sense. So we're going to be going through those. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, please. So here's my joke of the day. The other day I sent my wife a text message. I said, send me some nudes. This is what she sent back. This is called a nudibranch. And it is, in my opinion, the coolest thing to find while diving. Anybody want to guess how big this bad boy is? That would be cool. How big? A little smaller. Yep. This is a bigger nudibranch. So if you get a chance, go online to Google and search sheep's head nudibranch, or sheep's head nudie, N-U-D-I. It is the very coolest nudibranch you can possibly see. It looks like a little sheep with little wings behind it. It has two little eyes and a little face on it. It is the cutest nudibranch you will ever see in your life. It's my favorite, but this one I found of my own. So they're just basically sea slugs that look like different things. So that's my bad joke for the day. Laugh with me or you don't get points. Just kidding. Just kidding. Next slide, please. Again, if you think I'm a great instructor, please go to Facebook and Google and please say that and give us a review. If you think I suck as an instructor, go to Facebook and Google and say that. I have thick skin. I just want you to go to Facebook and give us an honest review. That's all I can ever ask, and I only ask for integrity. So if you wouldn't mind, please handle that for me. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about dive briefing. Since Aaron isn't in here yet to do his teaching portion, we'll talk about dive briefing. How important do you guys think a dive briefing is? Absolutely. So as you go through this process, the main way to avoid accidents is simply doing one thing. Plan your dive your plan. All wrapped in one thing in ideas. So as we start going through our dive, we want to do a pre-dive briefing. The first part we start with is, what's the objective? What are we trying to accomplish today? What do we want to do? And we want to make it a little deeper than, I want to get wet or I want to make bubbles, right? I want to see pretty fish. So we try and put together the objective dive. So today's dive, we're going to go out and we're going to dive to 60 feet for 50 minutes. Our turn point is going to be this. The objective of the dive is to do a 60-minute dive, whatever it is. Second point, what are the conditions? Is it cloudy? Is it raining? Is it snowing? That's an actual dive condition, I kid you not. We have seen snowing on dives before, right? So what are the conditions?
That's the first dive I dove with you. It was snowing on us on the west bank of the Snake River.
It was snowing, right? And so in Idaho, that's a real dive condition. By the way, guys, everybody say hi, Nikki. This is my beautiful, blushing, amazing wife who is far better instructor than I will ever be. And I'm extremely blessed and fortunate to have her as my partner and dive buddy in life. She is the best dive buddy a man could ever hope for. So that is my blushing and beautiful wife. So what are the conditions? How big are the waves? What's the current like? What are the conditions? What's our dive plan today? Okay, we're going to go down this way. We're going to do this. We're going to be down for this long. We're going to be at this depth, right? Communication. Think that might be important? Why would communication be important? You're in kind of the healthcare industry.
How do you communicate in case of an
Make sure everybody's safe. So there's two sides of that, the safety aspect of it and the fun aspect of it. So you and I are on a dive together, and I say, hey, what do you think I'm trying to tell you? What do you think this might be? Lobster.
That thing.
So this would be lobster, or my personal favorite, shark, right? Absolutely. Crab. Eel, absolutely. Nudibranch.
We already did crab.
Nudibranch. Nope, turtle. Two hands over, thumb, fingers out, turtle. Right?
Are those the official signs for those things?
They're the most common. How about that? My wife's personal favorite sign. I gotta go pee.
I made that one up.
She did make that one up,
Oh my
absolutely.
god, I really gotta go.
And then we learned a new sign from another dive shop. If he says, "You guys ready for my new dive sign?" You've hurt my feelings. That's a joke one, of course, but there's a hand and arm signal for most things. But what do those look like? But how about if I ask you? Yeah, exactly. You out here? The truck's not locked. So how would you answer me? If you got 2,700 pounds of gas left, how would you answer me? It's a good thing to know because there's different ways to do that, right? Here's the way I do it. Front of the hand is 1 through 5. Back of the hand is 6 through 9. So 27. That's how I do it. I've seen other people do 1,700 or 1,700. I prefer single hand, but that's because I dive tech. And there's a lot of times you need to be able to only do it with one hand, so simplicity. But communicate that ahead of time. What does that look like, right? And then Nikki and I do the I love you sign quite a bit. If you ever watch a dive video with Nikki and I in it, I guarantee at some point you will see the I love you. And that's our way of saying, are you having fun? Is this a good dive? Are you okay? We ask a bunch of questions at the same time, right? How about this one? Turn the dive. We're at halfway point, turn the dive. But we talk about these things, right? So turn the dive. Halfway. We're at halfway at the point, and just because we're at halfway doesn't mean we're going to turn the dive. Maybe we're doing a drift dive where I'm at half point, I'm half my air.
Third.
Safety stop, 3 minutes.
Where can we kind of learn all of these?
It's a great question. I have a slide in here, and you can actually go look on SSI. They have it in the SSI book, as well as you can just Google scuba hand and arm signals, and it's easy to find.
I would say the most important thing is communicating with the people you're diving with. Let's say you go to Thailand to dive a wreck. They may not use the same, and the diving buddy you have, maybe a NAUI or a TDI, they may have some different signals. So just communication before the dive, because they may say something you're like, what the heck is he talking about?
The good news is most of these are pretty international and pretty common, but there are differences, absolutely. I've been diving enough with enough different people that if I forget to communicate air or numbers to them, that I've seen it the 3 most common ways, I'll figure it out, right? Safety stop is pretty common throughout, but there are definitely differences, you know? How about this one?
Stop stirring the pot.
Hover.
Hover.
That come up and hover. How about this?
Deco.
Yeah. How much deco do you have? How much time you have left on your safety stop? So that's if I look over at you and we've already agreed to safety stop, I'm asking you how much deco, and he's telling me 2 minutes. Got 2 minutes left. How about this one?
Cleared my deco.
Cleared my deco. I'm cleared my safety stop. I've gone through the full 3 or 5 minutes, whatever that is. I've cleared it. So, but the key thing about this is communication. Hey, Aaron, we never dove together, so let's go through some quick hand and arm signals. Communicate before you get in the water because it's a lot easier to know what's going on ahead of time than afterwards. Buddy checklist. Now, in the end, who's responsible for your dive? You. You're all responsible for your own dive, but it's not a bad idea to help your buddy. So here's how I do it. There are all kinds of different acronyms, and there's one from Patty that's BWARF. Honestly, I couldn't tell you what the letter stood for me because BWARF just, my brain stops there and I think puke. So, and that's kind of where I end. But here's how I do my buddy check. It's really simple. Go ahead and stand up for me, Steele. We're in dive gear. Just pretend with me for a minute, right? The first thing I do is I play the very famous LDS game called Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes. I swear to goodness, this is exactly what I do. He's got a mask. Looks good. His BC is clipped. It's clipped. It looks like it's nice and tight. He's got his regulator over his shoulder, and he's got his safety second ready to go right here. I look down. He's got his wetsuit zipped up, and it looks like it's in good condition, and he's got boots on and fins in his hand. Go ahead and turn for me. Starting with the head, I can see that he's still got his mask. I reach over. I check to make sure his air is all the way on. Good to go. It looks like it's all in the good position. His tank is not loose. I check the strap. I keep going down and make sure that everything's good. Turn for me. You're good to go. Now me. And then he plays head, shoulders, knees, and toes with me. Start with the head. Go to the, and work your way down from head, shoulders, knees, and toes. That's the easiest way I can tell you that you can possibly do a buddy check. Look at your buddy. If something doesn't seem right or something seems odd, it probably is. Everything's based on a pattern. And have you guys noticed that? Good, you have a seat. Thank you. Very good. How about a hand for our model today? Woo! Good job, Anna. You did a great job. So as we go through this process, has anybody noticed that we're pretty much all the same? That the way I put you in your gear is pretty much the same way I put you in your gear. Kind of notice a similarity? The good news is as a general rule, you will notice that most gear is set up similarly, especially for new divers. The way you learn to dive in Japan is the way you learn to dive in Idaho, is the way you learn to dive in Roatan, is the way you learn to dive in Florida. It's pretty straightforward. When you start getting more advanced divers, they want to change things, and they will change little things. So as we get on the dive boat, it's definitely a good idea to get an idea what's the difference in gear. This guy's got 3 buttons on his inflator. Maybe I should find out about that. This guy, where's his weights? If you went to look for Nikki's weights, instead of them being right here, they're behind. If you go to look for weights when I'm diving my side mount, you won't find them because I don't carry ditchable weights. But knowing that things, so be aware. Buddy checklist. What is my buddy wearing? Familiarize yourself with your equipment as well as your buddy's equipment. Next one is pretty straightforward. How are we getting in the water? How are we getting out of the water? About 5 minutes. Usually with the dive guide, because one of the key things as a good dive guide is they're not only going to go through all this, but they're also going to talk to you about interesting things you will see, where you're most likely to see them. So they'll go through some of those things as well. But we're talking about just the basic fun stuff. But in the test and in your homework, it talked about what's the best way to get in the water. 2 words. I'm looking for 2 words. That's one of them. Right on. Woo! Good job. Safely is the second word. Very safely. Good try. Easiest. The easiest and safest. That's how I want you to get in the water. The easiest and safest. Now, I can tell you, I was on a dive boat at my favorite shop in Jupiter, Florida, and there was just 3 of us. And this guy he'd come over from Europe, and he was a massive tech diver. He was that guy. I've done every dive on the planet, including Mount Everest. I was the first one to dive. He was that guy. There's always that guy on the boat. No matter what dive you've done, he's done 10 of them that were 10 times harder, bigger, and carried 18 tanks at the same time. There's that guy. And this was that guy. We're all standing on the back of the boat. The captain's setting us up, and we're getting ready to do giant strides. And he looks at the two of us, my dive buddy, and says, I can't do a giant stride. I have to do a back roll. At first I was like, you can't take a step off the back of the freaking boat. It's not that hard. But I was like, you know what? And my buddy was like, you do you. You know, whatever's easiest and safest for you, you do that. That's all we're looking for. Easy and safest. If you have to do a back roll, you should absolutely do a back roll. If you have to sit your butt down on the swim deck and flip yourself in, you do that. Easiest and safest. It's a test question, by the way. Lost buddy procedure. That's in your homework. What does it say to do if you lose your buddy? For how long? There you go. 60 seconds.
And then just
Okay. Pro tip of the day. My favorite game with new divers on dive 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 is to play Where's Your Buddy game. I love this game. It's my favorite. I even tell divers that I'm going to play this game, and they still fall for it. It's awesome. I will go to you when you're when your diver, your buddy is away from you, and I'll ask you, where's your buddy? Every single time, I swear. Ryan did it. I saw Ryan do it. He doesn't want to admit it, but he did it. You did too. Admit it. He doesn't want to. It's all good. No, Ryan's a great diver. They stop. The buddy is 5 feet above him, always. 4 feet, 5 feet above him, and they go, oh my gosh, I've lost my buddy. I don't know. And I'm like, they're right there. As you're looking up, you're now in a 3D environment that is a big bubble. So as you're panning around, please realize that you're used to being on land and looking like this. Please pan up and down as you go left and right, because there's a good chance your buddy will be slightly above or slightly below you, and they'll be out of your field of vision. So look up and down for 60 seconds. If that's one full turn, that's one full turn. If it's 2 full turns, it's 2 full turns. Emergency procedures. What happens if? What happens? What happens if I get on the wrong boat? That happens, by the way. Then you get to do the swim of shame because you were too stupid to get on the right boat. What happens if the captain dies? What channel on the radio do I get on? Good question to ask, right? Because he's got the radio, and usually they'll have it on the side of the radio, but what they'll generally say is, if there's an emergency, please use channel 17 because that's our local channel. If you use channel 87, that's the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard comes, and it's super embarrassing. So, but be aware, what are the 2 channels? Should be written on the side of the boat. Yeah, fair enough. But if there's a problem, they'll tell you, and know what those 2 channels are. But what's the emergency procedure? If something happens, this is a real accident that happened recently, in the last 6 months. They had a diver come up and start presenting with signs and symptoms of DCS, the bends. They went to go to the air box where the oxygen is kept. The oxygen box was locked up with a padlock. Who had the key? They don't know. All they know is the lock was rusted shut, that even if they had the key, they couldn't get it open, and the box was rusted as well. You get on that boat. Mr. Dive Master, would you mind showing me your oxygen bottle? It's perfectly within your right. Every dive boat is required to carry a full bottle of oxygen. If you guys ever go diving with me, unfortunately I can't do your guys' open water, I'd love to, but if you go diving, Aaron will tell you that we both carry oxygen in our trucks. And part of my dive briefing when we are out there, I say, hey, if there's an accident, there are 2 bottles of oxygen in the back of my truck in my EMT bag. And I also love to jokingly mention, if you get a cut big enough that needs that doesn't stop, I have a brand new suture stapler kit in my truck, and I'm happy to staple any part of your body to any other part of your body for you. I will do that free of charge, by the way.
And free of anesthetic.
With that free of, and I also have super glue. So, and I have everything. I have
No
a full
painkillers.
EMT in my bag, kit in my truck that I carry with us on all dives. But what are the emergency procedures? What does that look like? How do we call for help? How do we get to a chamber? Where are the chambers? Emergency procedures. And then finally, go, no-go decisions. The simplest way for a no-go decision for you is if you're not feeling it. If you have 3 problems as you're prepping for the dive. Call the dive. Anybody can call a dive at any reason for any time, at any time for any reason. Period.
You say anybody, so let's say there's like 10
Mhm.
and one person says, I'm not diving, and nobody dives?
No, you don't dive. You're responsible for you. If they're planning on the dive and you don't want to dive, you can call your dive at
Okay,
any
that's
time.
what I always want to make sure.
Fair
It's
enough.
like,
Good clarification question. I like it. So anybody can call their dive at any time for any reason without consequence. It's huge. You get on that, you're feeling a little sick. Don't dive. You're getting out there and something's not acting right, or you're just not feeling it. My favorite person to reference on this, I have a friend, her name's Jill Heinrich. She's a world-class diver and in the Women's Divers Hall of Fame, all that fun stuff. And when Jill Weiss says, hi, Jill, she's absolutely amazing. First woman to ever dive an iceberg cave in the Antarctic. Pretty amazing diver, right? There's Nat Geo specials on her, and there's a biography coming out and all kinds of cool stuff. Amazing diver. I asked her, I says, when's the last time you called a dive? She says, oh God, I call dives all the time. She says, as a general thumb, when I go on a dive trip where we're doing 3 a days, she says, I usually don't dive the last day because your most highest probability of having a dive accident is the last dives of the trip, any trip. Just so a lot of times I just sit on the boat, enjoy the waves, enjoy everybody coming in and out, enjoy the seagulls. And I figure if Jill's willing to call a dive, you should be willing to call a dive. And I promise you, if you ever come on a dive with me and you call it, I will probably either hug you or high five you. If it's Steven, I'll probably do both because he's really cuddly. But we had this happen. I can't remember if David was there or not, but we had one of my ice divers this winter, got in the hole, got down for a few minutes, came right back up, and he said, Benjamin, I need out of the hole. I'm not feeling it. I helped him out of the hole. I gave him a high five. I says, absolutely. I helped him out of his gear, helped him into the warming tent, and it says, you take your time. If you end up diving this weekend, great. If you don't, great. I'm proud of you and for being willing to be that guy that would call a dive because you weren't feeling it. Not about 20 minutes, 30 minutes later, he was feeling it, came out, readjusted, got his game face on, and says, okay, I feel like I'm ready. And he did great. But he was willing to call a dive. I have immense respect for somebody who's willing to call a dive. So, and this is a little moray that I captured. I just have this thing for Morio's because, like I said, he just told his dad joke. He really wants you. Did they get it? Did they get it? That's what he's trying to say for you right there. Next slide, please. Okay, next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. And let's go back up one. One more. So, I just want to talk about this. I'm going to be nice to you guys. We're not going to go through dive tables in a hardcore way. Because as my dive guides were amazingly wonderful in pointing out last week, we went a little over on time and we need to be better about that. So I'm going to be a little bit better. We're going to get a little more pool time tonight.
Are they behind this paint?
They are behind the picture.
Why do they put the picture up there?
Just to hide them. It's just,
Because it's so much prettier than the dive table.
it is prettier than the dive tables. So let's just go through a couple things real quick. Let's look at my dive computer. I did a dive to 40 feet for 2 hours and 18 minutes. This is my actual dive computer. So let's look at that for a minute. Let's go to 40 feet. What is the maximum amount of time I can do a dive for? Yeah, 2 hours and 10 minutes. So, am I outside of the tables? I am. Go to the next slide, please. My average depth on this dive was 28 feet for 2 hours and 18 minutes. Now, based upon that information, am I still outside the tables? If we use 20, so you say 30 feet, I can do 205 minutes. A little over 3 hours, right? At 28 feet average. So be aware, as you look at these dive tables, they design them in a box format. But below is the actual dive that I did. I went down, came up, came up, up, down, up. And this was me going over and over top of reefs. I did one quick pop to the surface to check to see where I was at to make sure I was on course. Went back down, more safety stop, And there was no need for a safety stop because you can see right here, I've got 16 minutes where I stayed around 20 feet. So be aware, the dive tables are actually pretty broad. You can get a lot of time out of a dive table without having to worry about going into decompression, right? And that's where I go in and I get excited, and Aaron as well. He and I are both, how deep can we go and how long can we stay? As long as we can carry gas, right? But you guys can absolutely do a 40-foot dive for a long freaking time. 130 minutes, 2 hours and 10 minutes. And if that's just your deepest point, your average depth is actually 30 feet, 205 minutes. Now, I can tell you there's a place in Florida outside of West Palm called Blue Heron Bridge, world-class dive, world famous. People go there from all over the world. The deepest you're probably going to get if you really try and lay on the bottom, about 29 feet. But they have sharks come through, rays. I've seen so many rays there, so many eels. I've seen the biggest and fastest starfish I've ever seen in my life. It was about this big, I kid you not, and it moved about that fast. I was like, holy crap, that thing's going to town. I've seen turtles there. I've seen, you name it, triggerfish. It's one of Nikki's favorite dives because you can just go spend hours there. And you can spend 2 hours on a single 80 cubic foot tank, no big deal. So just be aware. You can actually get quite a bit out of it. Just be prepared to plan. So Aaron, would you like to take safety stop and go through the next few slides? Awesome, thank you so much. By the way, guys, this is Aaron. Aaron is an amazing dive master and has more dives than I do, and probably more bottom time than everybody in this room combined, including myself. So
Most of it was commercial diving, so I was just sitting on the bottom working. But, so safety stop, kind of touched on that with our hand signal. Does anyone know what the purpose of a safety stop would be? Yeah, just as the name implies, right? Safety. So is it mandatory? The safety stop mandatory? No, not mandatory, but highly recommended, right? So what's in recreational dive? Yeah. Once you get into decompression, then it becomes mandatory for stops. So what is the purpose of us taking this class? To be safe divers, right? So if we can do something to make ourselves safer, we want to do that so that we don't end up with any of the decompression illnesses. Do you want to switch to the next slide, Dave? All right, so this kind of goes through a lot of what happens to our body. Trying to think where he's got this one going. Okay, so our safety margin, M value, line, and actual profile. So M value line is our theoretical, what we went to. That's that box thinking, right? The dive tables are set up as if you went to 40 feet, stayed at 40 feet, came straight up to the top. Our actual profile, as he went through, is a little more conservative because we're going up and down. During our dive, we're going to take on gas. Did he go over that? I wasn't here last week. So we're going to take on nitrogen. So let's see, what's the next slide going to go over? You go to the next slide real quick, David. See how far he goes on this one. Next slide, real quick. All right. Okay. Go back to the last one. I just didn't want to know how far he went to. So as we take on nitrogen, that's what we're trying to get rid of when we go to our safety stop. So the whole dive tables are designed to help us be safe while we dive. As it says here, less deco is more risk, right? The less decompression, more deco, less risk, or more time to release those bubbles. So jump to the next slide. So dive tables and safety stops are how divers manage the size of the bubbles in our air, in our bloodstream. So if we went straight from 100 feet to the surface, those bubbles don't have a chance to go out of solution into our bloodstream and then breathe out. So the safety stops help assist in the reduction of the size of those bubbles. So think about, you got a bubble this big. We went over the balloon probably in the first class or second class. When we get down there, that bubble's smaller, but then it comes back out as we go up. As we get closer to the surface, there's less ambient pressure around us. So as we stop at that safety stop at 15 or 20 feet, those bubbles have a chance to get out of our system. It gets out of the tissue. Once we get into like a higher level like science of diving, you'll learn how different tissues absorb the nitrogen at different rates. The longer we stay down, the more those bubbles build up in different tissues. With recreational limits, we stay within where we could go straight from our dive to the surface without, theoretically, without having an issue, right? But we want to make this as safe as possible. You've got the gas, you go there to dive, right? What's the point in getting to the surface as fast as we can? At least every dive I've ever been on, my goal is to see as much as I can and be under the water as long as I can. So an extra 3 minutes floating around, seeing what's there, isn't a big deal, and it helps you be safer. And like it says here, this is something I think we overlook a lot. There's no clear line between good and bad. Some divers, depending on their physical fitness, whether you smoke or drink alcohol, other health issues you may have, two divers do the same exact dive, one gets hurt, one doesn't. So it's always, I guess, better to be conservative. Like it says, each of our bodies manage bubble sizes differently. Do a safety stop. Like I said, it's not required, but it's always recommended, highly recommended. And most dive guides that you go with will treat it as if it's mandatory, just so that they're safer and their divers are safer. Next slide. All right, so this is what they've done is they've taken a Doppler and it measures the bubbles in the bloodstream as divers have come up. So if we look at the blue is a direct ascent. So they went down to whatever their dive was, came straight to the surface without a safety stop. You can see how much their bubble count. And I don't know if this is in millions or hundreds or how they count that, but you can see how high that is coming straight out of the water and how long it takes. So even at 120 minutes, there's still, say, 19 or 20 bubbles. So that's if you just went down, you did your 50-foot dive for 40, 50 minutes, came straight to the surface. The second one is 2 minutes at 3 meters or 10 feet. So you can see how much difference there is just by doing a safety stop, right? They reduce it from, say, 120 to 20 bubbles. And then how much faster that comes down. The more bubbles in your blood, the more chance you have for decompression sickness, for that nitrogen to come out. And then the yellow one is 1 minute at 6 meters, so at 18 feet or 20 feet, and then 4 minutes at about 10 feet. They basically come out with almost nothing, and within 30 minutes, they've got 0 bubbles. So that's actually measuring the bubbles that's in their bloodstream. So taking an extra minute at 20 feet and then doing 4 minutes at 10 feet, that's going to get your chance of having any diving-related injury significantly reduced. Next. All right, so takeaways. Safety stops reduce bubbles. Longer safety stops reduce bubbles more than a shorter one. A 5-minute safety stop during repetitive dives increases the safety. You saw how much, exponentially how much it reduces it. So do a safety stop. Okay, any questions?
How deep is the safety stop?
From the book, what does it tell you in the book?
I don't remember.
So 3 meters or 10 feet. It said 3 meters on there, but maybe that was.
I got my other slide on the safer.
Okay.
For the 3 to 5 minutes at 20 feet.
Okay. Yeah, that one said.
Why should you do a safety stop? Makes you safer.
Yep.
The bubbles in your system.
Kind of like wearing your seatbelt in the car. The new cars are designed to help keep you safe, but if you don't wear the seatbelt, it's not as safe, right? It's another safety precaution.
do a safety stop? Is a safety stop required?
Not required.
Should you do a safety stop?
Yes.
Absolutely. So,
If you go on a dive with me, we'll stop at the safety stop every time.
So is that every 20 feet?
Nope.
Just the first
20 feet to the surface. You're 20 feet below the surface.
20? Is that going down?
Nope. Just going down, you're taking on gas. As you're coming up, you do the safety stop to let that gas out.
So if you're below that 20 feet, you're actually still taking gas on. So that's why 20 feet, you're less than a full atmosphere of extra pressure. You'll actually be reducing the gas in your blood.
What's the general consideration? This is not the book. What's the general consideration for a dive to begin a dive? A little debate on this, but there's a general rule. It's kind of generally accepted. Shallower. What's the minimum that's considered a dive?
30?
20 feet for 20 minutes. That's generally considered the bare minimum litmus for a dive.
Yeah.
But now here's a question for you. If you do a dive for 20 feet for 20 minutes, you have to do a safety stop.
You're at the
Literally
safe.
out of safety stop.
Exactly. Use common sense. If you dive deeper than 20 feet, back up. Stop at 20 feet for 3 minutes. It's not going to hurt you, and I promise you it's better than anything you're doing. Right? Who would rather spend 3 minutes, 20 feet in the ocean, fish, or go to work? I don't know. Steven's about the same thing. Doing nothing, but you work at the site, so I get what you do all day long. It's a lot of this. Well, look at that cool YouTube video. But for the rest of us that aren't Steven, I promise you 3 minutes in the ocean watching great fish is better than anything you're going to do back in Idaho. So I just want to make sure you guys got the safety stuff. It's important. Do a safety stop.
Flying after diving. Has anybody read this part in the book and know what the rule is? A day. What does a day mean? 24 hours. Now, why does that have anything to do with after diving? Pressure changes. So when we're coming up from a deep dive, what's the pressure doing to us? It's getting less, right? And then when we go up to 30,000 feet in an airplane, what's it doing? Getting less again, right? So those bubbles that may still be in your blood or in your tissue are going to come out of solution again. So it's the same thing as if you came up too fast. And a lot of the new dive computers and things will actually have less or more time depending on your dive depth. But a good rule of thumb is the last day of your trip, to spend it on the beach having fun or doing something at the resort before you fly home, so that you don't fly within 24 hours of your last dive. Go to the next slide. This may even answer it. So this is part of your test, so we'll go over that. Diving at altitude or flying after diving, who can tell me the answer? D, requires special diving computer functions, altitude, and or refraining from flying for at least 24 hours. So that's what the question in the book's going to be like. It's not simply yes or no. It's we want to know at least 24 hours, or if you've got a dive computer that adjusts for that. Good job. Next slide. Oh.
And or? There's an
Or.
or in there? Why would it be or?
So if you have a dive computer that'll tell you you could fly in 18 hours because it counts, or you just wait 24 hours.
Yeah. So the dive computer can tell you.
Generally, computers will tell you 24 hours, but what the key point is altitude table and or training. Because the question is diving at altitude
Or flying after.
So what it's saying is if you're diving in altitude, which is different, there's an altitude diving class to be aware of. So as you're going through this, it's saying if you're diving at altitude, for example, I dive in Yellowstone all the time at 7,700 foot elevation. So as before I get ready to travel out of Yellowstone, I would use the altitude table to determine when I So
Or if
leaving
you're going to
those
drive
sitting-
up over a mountain pass,
Exactly.
you also have to take that into consideration.
A great example of that is the crater. If you decide to go diving at the crater in Homestead, and you want to drive home, the crater's at 6,000 feet. No matter which direction you come out of the crater, you're going to go over an 8,000 foot pass. You're going to ascend 2,000 feet. Either direction you go. Of the Homestead crater.
In
Homestead,
Heber, Utah.
Outside of Park City. About 20 minutes outside of Park City. Homestead. Yep, the Homestead Resort and Homestead Crater in Utah. So either direction you come out, it's about 40 minutes southeast of Salt Lake. So if you go diving in the crater, which is 67 feet deep, 6,000 foot elevation, unless you're going to Park City, if you leave to come home, you're going to go over a mountain pass that's 2,000 feet elevation gain. Direction you go, or how you get out there. So you need to make sure you understand the altitude tables and how long do I have to wait before I can drive away from Homestead Crater. That's about 2 to 3 hours, by the way.
And that, if you really want to get into this like depth of what all this does, Science of Diving class is awesome because it goes over exactly what's going on with your body, why this happens, because this is pretty much just a 9,000 foot, just quick overview of what's going on to keep you safe. And then we can get into classes that really go into why diving at altitude is different than diving at sea level, why flying and driving over passes. Oh, yeah, altitude diving. If you run or dive around here, that's a really good class to take because right now we're at 4,500 feet. Most of the stuff that's really cool to see up in Yellowstone is at 7,000 feet. Bear Lake's at what, 6,400, 6,200? So most of the stuff we dive locally is going to be altitude diving. And so it's really good to understand. There are small differences, but they can add up over a longer dive or a deeper dive here.
Anybody ever dealt with an insurance company and realize that they will find anything possibly can to reject your, or even seen a movie where they did that?
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Absolutely, the insurance companies will find anything. So here's my suggestion: is if you have Dan Insurance, Dan is freaking awesome. I love Dan. They're the only really dive agency or agency, I should say, agency that will insure for insured divers out there. They're the biggest, the best, and they're pretty much the only one. If you have a dive accident and you have dive insurance and you're diving at 7,700 foot with me in Yellowstone, and you have an accident, I think there might be a precluder for them to be able to reject your claim. Not certified to dive at altitude. Now, if they do that, it's a whole different thing, and I don't think they would. But do you really want to take the thing? I don't think they would, because a helicopter ride out of Yellowstone is going to be what, about 10 grand?
30?
30? Okay, 30. A day in a
Yeah.
chamber is going to cost you another 10 to 20. So if you have an accident in Yellowstone, they have to fly you to a chamber. You're looking at probably a minimum of 40, probably closer to $60,000 that your Dan Insurance will pick up for you. But if they can say, hey, wait a minute, you were diving altitude, you're not certified, because what we ask you to do is dive within your limits, dive with your training, dive within your ability. Those are the rules. If you are not trained for altitude, there is a stand that they could say, oh, you're not certified to dive at Yellowstone, so you're just
Well,
that's my pitch
yeah.
on why altitude, and that's why, honest to God, that's why my wife let me teach her altitude. I've got my name on very few of my wife's cards, but that is one because she's like, I don't want to have to deal with the insurance if there's a problem.
Well, and once again, you're responsible for your own safety.
You are.
So if you're going to dive in those conditions, why not know what the changes you need to make to your diving, whether that's shallower depths because of the altitude or shorter times underwater. Go ahead to the next slide. Okay, proper procedures for shore diving. So what would be the difference between a shore dive and a boat dive? What are you worried about? Could be waves, surf entry techniques. So surf the big waves coming in at you. The other thing is it a rocky shore? Is it a sandy beach? Jumping off a boat's pretty simple. Getting back into the boat is climbing up the ladder. Shore dives, you can encounter rocks. You may have to walk out a long ways, so do you want to put your fins on as soon as you hit the water, or do you want to go out a little bit before you put them on so you're not walking backwards for half a mile out into the water? So just some of the things to think about. Next slide. All right, so proper procedures for boat diving. Anybody here get seasick or motion sickness? Or known somebody who has? Yeah. And sometimes, if it's a rough water, you may get seasick and you've never been seasick before. So those are some things to consider. How's it, am I feeling sick? Maybe it's worth taking a Dramamine or something. Those are things you can talk to your doctor before you go. So if anyone eating at Alberto's breakfast burritos that weigh like 16 pounds, is that probably a really good idea before you're going to go jump on a boat and go diving? Yeah, if you want to chum for sharks, that's a good way to do it. So eating a big, heavy meal before a dive usually doesn't sit well with anybody because all of your blood's going to digest that food. Plus, probably higher protein, lighter stuff like energy bar. Those Cliff bars are really good. Something that's going to have a little, not over sugar, because then you'll crash from the sugar, but oatmeal. Something that's a light, higher. Yeah, pretty much. Even though it doesn't feel like you're going to run a marathon, you do a lot of physical activity on a dive and your body's treating it about the same. So be about the same as you're going to go run 4 miles or something. What would you eat? Would you eat a steak before you go ran 4 miles? Probably not, because it wouldn't agree with you very well. But they are some pretty good over-the-counter medicines to help with seasickness. If you have major medical issues with seasickness or motion sickness, probably go see your doctor before you're going to go on a dive trip and have him help you.
A couple of pro tips for you. I use this. I say the same thing in marathoning as well. Always poop before you dive because nobody wants to hear you crap. My joke for the day. It's a real thing, and it really does happen. And the compression underwater actually causes a effect that will make you want to urinate. Cold and pressure will make you want to urinate. So it causes you want to do other things. The last thing you ever want to do is have to take up on a dive boat. That is possibly the worst experience you'll ever have. It makes pit bodies at a construction site look like amazing. It's not a place you ever want to live or go into if you can help it. The other thing is with Dramamine, here's what my best experience is take 2 Dramamine the night before you sleep. And take 1 or 2 as soon as you wake up with water and drink, be nice and hydrated. Take 1 as you get on the dive boat. If you do that pattern, 2 the night before you go to sleep, 2 as soon as you wake up, and 1 as you get on the dive boat, you will be Popeye the Sailor person. There will be nothing in this world that will make you sick. Provided you don't eat the 5-pound, 15-pound pill.
Yeah.
Because I've done that one too. That's why that one's there, because I have done that one. I have absolutely chunked the fish. I will be the first to admit it right here. But if you do that the night before and the morning of, I've been on 6-foot wave boats. The only boat that would go out, we were up and down, up and down. Let's go, buddy.
Yeah.
That's my pro tip for the day. Most of our experience happens.
And one thing most people say, well, I don't want to have to urinate while I'm diving. Don't let that not keep you hydrated. Because hydration or dehydration is going to make you just as sick as eating that big burrito. So, I mean, even though you may have to urinate more, keep hydrated because it's going to make your dive a lot better. Next. All right, so executing the dive. So this has kind of all been going over what our dive plan is, right? Entering the water, where are we coming in, right? This is our pre-dive briefing. We went over this. Where are we going in? Do we have the proper amount of weight? So once we get in the water, we're going to do a weight check. Did we go over that the first week? Where you kind of, where you bobbed in the water to make sure you had enough to get down. Because having too much weight or not enough weight is going to make your dive miserable. You're going to be fighting it the entire time. Controlled descent. We don't want to jump off the boat and go 90 miles an hour straight to the bottom. We want to stop at the surface and slowly descend. We may have to add a little air to our BCs as we go down to maintain control. Navigation, this one I think should be above entering the water because we need to know which direction we're going before we get off the boat. Do we know that our dive is a current dive and we're going to go south or west, but know how to navigate or know where we're going before we get in the water, and then using sometimes landmarks if we're diving near the shore. We know we're going to swim towards the lighthouse, or we're going to swim towards that breakwater, or are we just going off a compass heading? So take that heading before you go under the water. Performing an ascent. So we talked about this. How many feet per minute should we go up? 30? At most 30 feet a minute, right? We don't want to go faster than that. So yeah, so 30 feet per minute's the fastest we want to go towards the surface, and then our safety stop. Exiting the water. What are some things, say we're getting on a boat, that we want to think about exiting the water? Yeah. Is there a ladder? Do you want to do that with fins on? You want to try and climb up a ladder with fins? Little awkward, might be dangerous. Do we want to take our regulator out of our mouth and take our mask off before we're on the boat? No. What happens if a wave comes and we fall off backwards? You're going right back under the water, you might breathe it in. What happens if you fall face first on the boat? Would you rather hit your face or the regulator? Well, the regulator is actually pretty soft because you got to, yeah, I don't know, hitting the deck right on your mouth. No, but I would say you just keep it in until you're safely on the boat. Yep, and then yeah. Well, and I mean it is pretty much plastic, so it's softer than your teeth, so it's going to break. Yeah. All right. An emergency plan. So that's one thing that we talked about pretty much in detail, emergency plan. So you get out of the water and there's a dive emergency. What are we going to do? You should have gone over that so you know what your emergency plan is, so that if something happens, you can take care of that. So those are the steps that we're going to do as we do our dive. All right, do you want to take over this one or you want me to just keep going? I'll let you, David, if you want to. I don't want to talk all night. That gets boring for you guys.
Talk to me. All right. So has everybody finished their homework entirely? Done? Completely? Completely? Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so everybody knows how to do this. I don't really need to talk about it. We can just go to the next slide. Right? What is the next slide? Do we talk more about it or? Okay, absolutely. So, okay. So calculating gas consumption and your consumption rate. Why would this be important to you guys? Exactly. Say it louder. Why would that matter to you? Yes. Okay, next slide. Okay, so easiest way to do this, determining SAC rate, which is, who remembers what SAC stands for? Special agent in charge, right? Surface air consumption. So, sorry, I've been watching White Collar. But, so surface air consumption means the amount of air you consume at the surface. Pretty self-explanatory, right? We love it when acronyms mean what they say. So, easiest way to do this, after we do our open water dives, you'll have a little bit of air left in your tanks. Go ahead, sit in a normal position at home. Best way to do this, kick on the TV. Everybody loves to do that, right? Supernatural. Measure the PSI prior to starting. Go ahead and write that number down, and then breathe normally for 20 minutes. Okay? How many of you can sit still for 20 minutes? How many of you can watch TV for 20 minutes? Easy, right? You can do a craft, you're going to be doing stuff underwater too. So you're going to be doing something no matter what. But breathe normally for the 20 minutes. Mark the volume in the PSI at the end. Divide by your total minutes. And then this part's important. Repeat 3 times an average. Why is it important to take an average? Scary episode makes you breathe more. Funny episode makes you breathe more, right? So take an average. That will be your average sac rate. Everybody's sac rate's different. You're going to breathe a lot more than him just because you're a lot bigger than he is.
So
You're
here's-
probably going to breathe less than him because he's just full of hot air.
should we plug our nose because
Yeah,
plug our
so
nose?
yeah, so you'll have your mask on for this, or plug
Oh,
your
so
nose.
really, there
Yeah,
you go.
like
That's
straight up, put your gear on.
like
Yep.
that's awesome.
Yeah, go ahead, throw your gear on, take pictures, tag Ben on Facebook. He loves it. Share it to Teach Me to Dive. Share it to the Idaho Dive Pirates page. It will make Ben's day. He loves it when people do this because you look ridiculous.
So
But
we're just dividing by 20 then, right?
yeah,
You said number 5.
yeah. So if you do it for 20 minutes, Yep. Yep, because your surface air consumption rate is going to be PSI per minute because we're doing everything in American. And so what we're doing is we're finding the most basic sac rate that you can. There's a lot more that goes into it. If you want to take science of diving, Ben's an excellent instructor for that class. He loves the nitty-gritty independent pieces. But this is just the most basic thing. Almost everywhere you dive in the world is going to have aluminum 80s to dive with. And so if you have a 3,000 PSI, yeah. So if you have a 3,000 PSI tank, go ahead and go to the next slide, Josh. If you have a 3,000 PSI aluminum 80 all across the world, you're going to be able to calculate very easily how much PSI you need for a certain dive. Yes. Yep, this is all part of the dive planning process. So along with going through the tables and making sure you're allowed to make this dive, you want to make sure you're carrying enough air for this dive. Because, I mean, there's different size tanks. We've got 63s, we've got 80s, we've got 100s, we've got HP 100s, we've got HP 117s. I actually found out that they make an HP 149. Ben is discouraging me from getting it, but I want to do it just kind of to be ridiculous. But you can carry various amounts of air. Yeah, just walk around with a big old welding tank on my back. But, so, way to do that, your surface air consumption rate times the atmospheres that you're diving. So, how many atmospheres are you under at 33 feet? 2 at 66 feet. At 99 feet. It's a lie, it's 4. I was holding up a 3, and then I realized I was lying because, yeah. So, you add 1 atmosphere for every 33 feet you go down, plus the atmosphere on the surface, and then you multiply by diving effort. Who here does manual labor? He thinks about it.
As a hobby.
Just at all. You ever have to unload dog food from the car? 50-pound bag, hucked up over your shoulder? Do you breathe more after you climb a set of stairs? The more you're moving, the more you're breathing, right? Same under the water. If you have a nice easy drift, a nice easy non-drift dive, and you're just going down to look at the fish and float around and have yourself a good old time, you're not going to breathe a whole lot. You might have to multiply by 1.5. If you have a dive in a river in an ice cold water, that kind of thing, go ahead and up that number a lot. Depending on what type of dive, the more experience you'll have, you'll start to learn like what to expect to multiply by. But this is all excellent things to keep track of. You like to take notes, go ahead and document all that. Next slide. Avoiding panic. Why do we want to avoid panic? You breathe more. Absolutely. Why else? Absolutely. You lose brain function. What happens if you lose brain function under the water? You're probably going to make some bad decisions. Absolutely. So, and another great reason, diving's all about having fun. We're not here to be panicked. We're not here to go through haunted houses. There's not a lot of haunted houses in the scuba world. We're here to have fun. I mean, we do pumpkin carving. I think that's about as close as we get to the haunted house. So having breathing difficulty, failure to maintain your equipment starts giving you issues. That's going to cause a risk for panic. Environmental conditions. What are some conditions that might make you panic under the water? Low visibility, absolutely. Anybody here claustrophobic? No? Good. That's great. But there's nothing quite as unnerving, I won't even say scary, but unnerving for me, as being in water where I know there is something close to me, but I can't see it. So I was in the water with a couple of students, and we were on their fun dive, and the water visibility was so bad, I was holding onto their tank like this, and I couldn't see what I was holding on to. So I'm just sitting here getting dragged along through the water. He was following his wife. I was holding on to him. His wife turned. He turned, pulled out out of my hand, and I could no longer see him to grab on. So I just waved through the water like this and was like, well, they're gone. Fortunately, it was a very small pool. It was only like 20 feet, and so I just swam in circles until I found them. But it is really unnerving to not be able to see where you're going, what you're doing, who's around you. Equipment, comfort, and ability. I think those are pretty well tied together, because the more comfortable and able you are, the more you're going to want to get better equipment, which will make you more comfortable and give you more abilities. Identifying the panic response. Who here knows what a panic diver looks like? That. Just about like that, exactly. You see those eyes start to get really wide, and probably they're starting to panic. What's the easiest way to get a panic diver under control? Touch them. Absolutely. Go up, reach up, grab their arm. A lot of times just having that reassuring comfort that somebody's there is going to be enough. If that's not enough and they start to freak out on you, tap them in their mask. That's usually enough to shake them out of their little bubble. Prevention of panic. How do we prevent panic?
Others or ourselves?
Both.
Well, with us, it's
One of
deep breathing.
deep breathing. Plan the dive, dive the plan. Absolutely.
Where you would.
Plan your dive, dive your plan, stay within your training and abilities. If you follow the diver code, you probably aren't going to get into a situation where you need to panic. Because anything that is beyond your comfort level, you should have somebody with you teaching you how to make that within your comfort level. Eventually, you are going to have to step outside your comfort zone a little bit, but we are going to do that as safely as possible the entire time. Next slide. Signs of a panic diver. Wide-eyed, fearful look, and a fast and erratic breathing pattern. Absolutely. What do the rest of these mean? Absolutely. If they're out of air, they're probably not panicked. They just want to breathe. Once they get air, they might panic. But usually at that point, their only focus is, where's the nearest air source? They don't have time to panic. Slow and erratic movement underwater. Got narked. Absolutely. Everybody loves it, except for the people who have to deal with you. Diver heading towards the surface before the scheduled end to dive. What does that mean? They want out. Anybody can call a dive at any time, right? Okay, next slide. Proper response to a difficult situation. You said it. Go ahead and say it again, but louder.
Stop breathing.
Absolutely. Number one thing to do, stop. If you try to do a knee-jerk reaction in a situation that you are not entirely and completely comfortable with, you're probably going to do the wrong thing. The underwater world is not our world. Your instincts don't matter a whole lot anymore. Always stop. Then breathe. You have air on your back, usually, if you've done everything right. Take the time to breathe. It will make a difference. Take the time to think, and then act. If you do those three things before you act, you will probably not make any terribly foolish decisions. You might still get made fun of on the surface, but it happens. All right, pro tips. Stop. Breathe at least 3 large inhalations and exhalations. Go ahead and give the Zen symbol, right? Ben's favorite Zen symbol. Check your gas supply. The more air you have, the longer you have to make a decision. If you have 4 hours worth of air in your tank, do you need to make a decision right now? Take the time. Count backwards from 5. Counting backwards helps reset your thinking, get your brain back on track. Review everything around you. Look around. Do you see somebody around you with more experience? Do you see a dive master, a dive guide, an instructor around? Sorry, blanked. What tools do you have at your disposal? Are there other people around that you can go up to and be like, hey, I'm having trouble with this, help me out? You know, I had an O-ring start leaking on me the other day, and I could hear something bubbling, but I couldn't quite figure out what it was, and so I signaled to my buddy, and I was like, hey, come take a look at me, check for my bubbles. I think I have a leak. And could I have taken my gear off underwater and all of that? Yes, but having my buddy right there, I've got other resources. Relax your body and your breathing. The more you relax, the less air you will use. The less air that you use, the longer you have to react. This will help you. Then, and only then, should you act. If you have a malfunction, can it be cleared or fixed easily? What are some malfunctions that can be cleared or fixed easily? Water in your mask, absolutely. When we covered the dolphin kick, who remembers why the dolphin kick's important? Happens to one of your legs or your fin falls off. If your fin falls off, do you still have another fin? Yeah, if one of your fin falls off, you still have another fin, right? Yeah, fins fall off all the time. It happens. Especially when it's your first time ever diving in them and didn't quite get it tight enough.
I was going to leave it there. I was going to let it lie just because it was like a fun joke between you.
It's all right. On that same weekend, we recovered 3 other pieces of gear, so at least mine was something that I had a backup of. Do we have a buddy nearby that can help you? Do you guys have buddies? No. Doesn't quite count. Exactly. Got your pony bottle there. Just because it has feelings doesn't mean it's not your bottle too. Should you start to the surface? What are some situations that would cause you to go to the surface? Running out of air, absolutely. What else? Feeling like you don't want to be there anymore. Absolutely. We're here to have fun. If you're not having fun, go ahead and reset. It is okay to pull out of the water. Other situations, I had a regulator go free flow on me. It was maybe 15 minutes into the dive. I was pretty deep at the time. I don't remember exactly. I think I was somewhere around 80 feet. And my regulator froze into the free flow position. So I signaled to my buddy. I'm like, hey, it's free flowing. I got to go. You guys stay and have fun. I'm just going to head to the surface. So I started heading up, and it ended up clearing. It ended up unfreezing at about 20 feet. And so I just kept kicking around at about 20 feet. They were all cold, so they came up behind me anyway, even though they didn't have to. And so that's an excellent reason to get out of the water, because at that point, I have all the air in the world. I can still breathe normally. I don't have to do a buoyant descent. I don't have to, blow to the surface. So I came up, and it actually unfroze at my safety stop. Like, I came up to my 20 feet, and I just was going to sit there and do my safety stop because I had the air. And while sitting there doing my breathing, it started trickling, and then finally it just went back to breathing normally. No.
Really?
If your regulator is free flowing, it's already using the air. You might as well use that air because it's going to be blowing out whether or not you want. Yep. Yeah. So, it's annoying. Because it's constantly trying to blow you up like a balloon, but it also has vents. And so we're actually going to do this drill today where we have a free-flowing regulator in our mouths. And so you're going to get to experience this for yourselves today. So I won't go too in-depth to it. But basically, as the air comes in, the excess just goes out the sides. So not the biggest deal in the world. Another thing I saw on one of the Facebook groups I'm a part of, I saw a gal, she was out on a boat dive, and her hose actually tore off of her regulator. So where the connection was, that connection actually rotted out and broke off in the water. And so at that point, yes, you should absolutely switch regulators. But next one, lost underwater. Who has seen one of these? Have we done the DSMB in this class? No. Okay. So this is a deployable surface marker buoy, or a delayed surface marker buoy. And all this is a great big tube that says diver below. It's reflective, it's brightly colored, and when it blows up, it floats up right in the water column. I'm not going to fully inflate it here, but just enough to get you the picture of that sitting upright in the water. So these are super useful. We're going to use these in class Wednesday. Sorry, I'm having trouble keeping track. We don't usually do Monday, Wednesday in this group.
Real quick pro tip for you on an SMB. Just most dive tips, 99.5% of dive tips come from real world experiences that we've had. My mom says, a smart person learns from their own mistakes. A genius learns from the mistakes of others. Learn from my mistake. He's got it all cute and small on mine. Mine are in bold 3-4 inch letters down the side with my name and my phone number. I was in a situation, we were at about 150 feet, a pretty heavy drift, and I pulled my string out to go ahead and launch my SMB. When I dive, I launch my SMB just before I begin my direct ascent. So if I'm at 150 feet, if I'm at 175 feet, I go ahead and launch at that depth. That way the boat has plenty of time to find me and knows exactly where I want, which I like the boat finding me and being able to get back on the boat. That's high priority for me. But anyway, so I pulled out a little too much string. There was a heavy drift, and as I launched the SMB, it was able to loop around my wrist, and it had enough air, and it started to drag me up. And so it dragged me about 20 feet up and 20 feet away from my group. So what I did is I pulled my knife, because I keep a knife on my left wrist. I grabbed my knife, cut it, and I let that thing free. It's happened 2 separate times to me where I've lost an SMB for one reason or another. I had another one, I was in a heavy drift at about 130 feet, and I was letting it out, and there was a knot in the string. And I didn't realize it was about 20 feet in. It carried me about 40 feet up and 40 feet away from my buddies. And as we got to a certain point, the current actually split. One current went this way, one current went this way. I went this way, my buddies went that way. So I went ahead and cut the string on that and let it go. So 2 different times I've had string malfunctions. I've gotten the SMB back both times. I got back on the boat, and the dive master says, "Hey, I bet you're looking for this," because they know who I am, and they're like, and it says Ben on it, right, in nice big letters. So write your name on stuff. Write your name on your dive gear in big letters. If you buy a dive flag, write your name and phone number on your dive flag, because as Aaron will tell you, dive flag and floats can magically and mysteriously disappear. We lost one at Bear Lake in May.
Did we get that back?
No,
No.
it's gone. Pretty much. I didn't write my name on it. That was my mistake, so it didn't come back to me. But write your name on gear that can get away from you. It's definitely to your advantage. I'd even write my name on my fins. It's something I've been thinking about, but I want my kid to paint my name on it in a cool, artistic way. So, but yeah, I'm telling you, these things do get away. Write your name on it. Pro tip for the day. That is a big daggum SMB.
All right, next slide. All right. Air sharing. Am I allowed to cover where it's in class?
You're right. I need to take this.
Okay,
I'm
yeah.
sorry. All right. This is the part. So air sharing. When do I do it? When does that look? How does that look? Right. If something happens and you need to share air with somebody because you've not done the very basic rule of look at your gauge every 2 minutes or every time you see something interesting. I can tell you, I keep my gauges, they're on my wrist, and I'm constantly, when you see me dive, you'll usually see me hands directly underneath, and I glance at them about every 2 minutes, right? So how we do that, if something happens, we make that decision making, to make that decision, what happens if I have to share air? The first thing we need to be aware of is how do we ascend? We're getting ready to do our ascent. An ascent should look like this. You okay to go up? Good. All right, let's go up. And so you want to be within grabbing distance of your buddy. If something happens and they have a malfunction or something happens and you have a malfunction, they can grab you, right? You can control that point. It makes it nice and easy. Next slide, please. So tonight we're going to be doing the air sharing ascent. This is where I've run out of air, but my dive is close enough to be able to share air with them. So where? Safely ascend to the surface while sharing air as both donor and receiver. Here's the good news for you guys, is we are going to do air sharing as both donor and receiver with me. Here's my reasoning behind that, is I can certainly teach you guys and have two of you doing air sharing as donor or receiver, but yeah, you have two new people doing a new skill. If I do it with you, you'll have the opportunity to be coached through it twice, where you know it will be done right and I know it will be done right. So I reduce the amount of potential errors. It makes it kind of a bigger pain for me, but I prefer a little extra safety. And so I'm a big safety. So why the value? Why is this important? If a diver or their buddy runs low or out of air or has an equipment malfunction, they must be comfortable sharing air as both donor and receiver. Where we're going to conduct this, we're going to practice first in the shallow, and then I'm going to take you into the deep. What we're going to do is we're going to play the rotation game. I'm going to take two people in the deep end with me. I'm going to do air sharing as donor first, and then I'm going to have them go to the shallow, and I'm going to have somebody else come in, and I will keep doing until I get through everybody as the donor, and then I'll have you guys rotate back through, and I'll do everybody as the receiver. So we're going to do it in the shallow and the deep. Next slide, please. Here's the process. I teach practice the primary and preferred method of passing the primary regulator. So just to let you know, typically if your buddy runs out of air, it's going to look something like this. They're just going to grab it. So I teach you to pass the primary so you can find the secondary. How this is going to work. In a stationary position underwater, the donor faces the receiver and breathes normally. Okay, David? You don't have to put gear on. I think we're good to go on that. Faces, when ready, the receiver will signal out of air, share. Okay? If I was out of air, that's going to be the signal. So what I'm going to do to this, I'm going to come to you. Are you okay? Out of air, share. You're out of air. The process is going to be, so good, give me that signal. You're out of air. So you're out of air. Cool. I'm going to be the one out of air. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn away from you. Because here's the thing. You ever go walking with your friends in the mall? Who's gone walking with their friends in the mall? Any hardware store, any grocery store, right? Do you watch your friends all the time when they're in the store? Have you got your eyes on them for at least 10 seconds out of every 20? No, right? And especially we're on a reef, what are we doing on the reef? We're going, he could be whatever, right? So the first part of this is I need you to get used to getting attention. Once I've gotten the idea that you're ready to do this, grab their attention. Should you be shy when this? Would you mind sharing some air? I'd like some strawberry, please. No, you're scared shitless, right? Excuse me, I luckily we're on YouTube, we can say that, right? You're scared. You're freaking out. If you're out of air, it's going to look more like get their attention. Number one, time, out of air, share. What you're going to do as the donor, you're going to take your right hand. You're going to grasp the hose at the point where it meets the second stage. Once you've done that, take a deep breath in because you want to have air, right? Reasonably impaired. If you're going to donate air, that you have some air too. Who do we always save first in an emergency? Yourself. Always save yourself first. So grab it at that first, on the hose where it meets the second stage. The big round thing is the second stage. Once you've taken that breath, you're ready. You're going to present it to the person. You as the receiver are going to take that, put it in your mouth. As soon as it is in your mouth, you're going to take that right hand. Right hand. You're going to take which hand? Always the right hand. You're going to take that right hand to their right strap. And you're going to get a good hold. I'm now breathing off his tank. Do I want him to get away? No, we are now the best friends in the entire world. Once I've got a hold of him and I'm breathing, at the same exact time, he's going to take his right hand, pull his secondary. He's going to put it in, clear it. Good job on that. I like that. He's going to clear it, put it in. He's now breathing as well. He's going to take his right hand and do what? Grab my right strap. Why do you think we do the right strap and right hand? The thing?
It's not a regular
Inflator.
The inflator. The inflator is on my left-hand side, right? You were.
made the right symbol.
I like
you
it.
made the right symbol.
I like it. I'm gonna give you a high five for that one, and you a high five for bailing her out.
We're trying.
So right hand to right strap, right hand to right strap, left hand on. Now, I'm the one out of air. What do you think he should do? Because right now I'm like, ah. What should he do? Calm me down. What is the fastest way to calm somebody down? Go ahead and show him. With his left hand, you're going to reach out and you're going to tap them in the mask. 3 good taps. Give it good taps right in the mask. I promise you, if somebody's starting to panic, the 3 taps are shocking. They will more than often just stop and freeze. Once you've got their attention, what should you do next? Breathe. Get them calmed down. Breathe. Are you okay? Breathe. Get them calmed down. Do you really want to surface with a wet cat? Get them calmed down. It'll make your life a lot easier. Stop. Breathe. Are you okay? Once you've got control of the situation, what's next? Are you okay? Ascend, swimming. Are you okay? Ascend, swimming. Now, he's the one giving me air. I have no air. Can I fill my inflator? Why should I have the inflator in my hand? Why should I have the inflator in my hand? What? I can let air out, but if I have no air to add in it and I'm already at the bottom, I'm probably negatively buoyant. There's going to be 2 reasons. Is there a chance something might be above us? So if I put my hand above me, what's going to hit? Yeah, I'll protect my head. Step 1. Step 2, when I get to the surface, do I want to be buoyant? Would it be easier to get buoyant if I knew where the thingy bob that's on my left-hand side is? Can I orally inflate my BC? Absolutely. How do I do that? How so? There's something I got to do first, though. Push the button. So what I'll do is I'm going to have to orally inflate. I'll push the button. I'll let the button off when I'm not blowing. Push the button when I am blowing. Now you're going to do something called the bob and fill. It will be substantially easier if you throw yourself backwards, get your face out of the water, and breathe normally. Some of God's air. And then lean forward. Lean back. And get a good breathing in.
Are we going to practice this?
We are absolutely going to practice this tonight.
Okay.
You will have the opportunity to do this live and
19 minutes.
in person.
That's great. No, there's.
This is what we're doing. So once you're at the surface, you're going to bob and fill, okay, using God's air. Now, here's a key factor. You were out of air. You're at 66 feet. Do you kick the regulator out of your mouth? Never ever have the regulator in your mouth. Even if you're doing an emergency swimming ascent and there's nobody around to share air with, true story. Last year I was teaching a solo class and I was diving a pony bottle, a little smaller than that little silver cylinder. I've got one a little smaller than that. I went ahead and intentionally, I breathed that dry. I had another tank on my back, plenty of gas, regulator around my neck. From 66 feet to 15 feet, how many breaths of air did I get, do you think? From an empty cylinder there was nothing left at 66 feet. I got 2 to 3. Boyle's Law becomes your best friend in the entire world. 2 to 3 breaths. As pressure decreased, volume increased. Kind of like the bag of chips that you take, you buy in at the bottom of the mountain, you take it to the top of the mountain, and all of a sudden it's full. Just get ready to pop. I've actually had those pop in the trailer. It happens. So always make sure you always have a regulator in your mouth. But we're breathing. Get to the surface. Bob and Phil. Now you're the one who is donating air. When do you let go of your buddy?
When he's floaty.
When he's floating. When you can feel that I'm floating, that's when you can let go. But stay with your buddy.
Even if you're under the water. Is that what you're
No,
saying?
no. Once you get to the
we're on
surface,
the surface. He's done his bob and fill. I'm holding on to him that whole time.
Oh.
until he's able to float on his own.
So I put my arm down just because it's awkward and uncomfortable in the water. You're just sitting there holding on to him.
Bob and Phil. So that's the process of the air sharing ascent passing the primary regulator. Step 1, I will ask you, are you okay? Out of air, share. Yes. You, out of air. I will turn away from you. And you will be out of air. You're to be out of air. So the first thing you need to do is step 1. Yes, may I help you? And most likely they're going to grab it out. But I want you to give me the signal, out of air, share. So give me the signal, out of air, share. I will grab the regulator at the hose where it meets the second stage. Present it out. You will take it, and you'll take that right hand and put it where? I will take my right hand, get my secondary, and I will take and grab him with the right. Once he's panicked out, I'm going to tap, tap, tap. You, breathe. Are you okay? Ascend, swimming, okay? Look up, swim, get to the surface. Bob and Phil.
How often have you done this?
I have never run out of air.
Real life.
I have never run out of
And
air.
Nobody else and your buddy has never.
I've never had a buddy run out of air, but I don't.
I think it's important that we do.
It's important that you know how to do this. I have never run out of air, and my buddies have never run out of air, but I'm also pretty careful who I personally dive with. My wife is always my buddy, and so I always make sure that I dive with her or somebody of my skill. So, and I tend to be a little bit higher up in the chain, so the people I dive with don't tend to have this problem, but it's not a problem until it is.
No, it's fine.
If you do what you're taught and maintain your equipment, your chances of ever needing to share air are slim to none.
Watch your gauge every 2 minutes or every time you see something interesting. Never surface with less than 500 psi in your tank. You should never be at the surface with less than 500 psi, period. About 15 minutes at 20 feet. 15 to 20 minutes. So, next slide, please. Go ahead and play that slide, please. Calm down. Breathe. The mass tap is a Benjamin thing. They do the jump and fill. I do the bob and fill. Next slide, please. I know, right? Dun, 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 dun. Next slide. Go down to emergency buoyant ascent, please. Okay, I need everybody to repeat after me at least twice, please. This is imperative. It's required. I won't go in the pool till you say it twice with me. Benjamin will turn my air back on. One more time, just okay. I'm going to turn your air off. But what am I going to do? I will turn it back on, I promise. So, emergency buoyant ascent. There's two types of emergency ascents. If you cannot get to your buddy in time and you run out of air, there's two different types of ascents. The first one is emergency swimming ascent. If we have time, we'll do that tonight. If not, we'll just go through emergency air sharing and emergency buoyant ascent. And we'll do emergency swimming ascent on Wednesday. But emergency buoyant ascent is what is it performed as an emergency buoyant ascent? Value to you, an emergency swimming ascent is performed if you run out of air and there are no divers close by. If you determine you are unable to swim to the surface, you may need to perform an emergency buoyant ascent. Where are we going to do this? In deep water. It's hard to do this in shallow water, right? Next slide, please. So, how we're going to do this. Which one of my fantastic, amazing dive guides wants to be my fantastic and amazing dummy? Quite fitting though, isn't it?
Like
You're just waiting
I
for
knew
me.
you'd like that.
Okay, put that around your, please. Are you okay out of air buoyant ascent? That's going to be simple. I'll show it to you again. Are you okay out of air buoyant ascent? If you are, give me the okay. What I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you turn to the side. You're going to take your information system in your left hand. Showing the air will be preferably. It'll make it a lot easier. I will take my right hand and I will hold it in your hand so we can both see your SPG, your pressure gauge. At this point, I will go ahead and start turning your air off. Breathe normally. You don't need to sip it because it's going to be off until you hit 0. I want to see you take one hard breath. That's it. When it gets, which will be at 0. Once I see that, or you get scared, give me the out of air symbol. So it gets down to 0. Air is back on. What you're going to do is you're going to let go of that gauge. You're going to bring your hands down. You're going to find your weight pockets. You're going to grab those weight pockets. You're going to pull them straight arm out, and you're going to drop them. Steele, why do you think I want you to do them straight arm out? What's below you on your feet? What happens if a weight pocket falls on your fin?
Oh,
Exact. Well, it's going to keep you down. More I can.
yeah.
So once you've got those weight pockets out, you're going to flare. Give me a kind of and face the surface. You want to look like an upside down starfish. That's what you're trying to do. A nice big flare facing the surface. Why do you think you might flare? Why would a parachuter, as he's coming down, flare out?
Parachuter, you're going to slow down going down.
Exactly. You're controlling the speed of your ascent. If you need to get up faster, you can come together. If you need to slow down, you're going to flare out. Now, magic question for you. Do you ever let that regulator out of your mouth? Never, ever, ever, ever. As you ascend, you'll get another breath or two out of an empty tank. Once you get to the surface, what are you going to do? Bob and fill. You're going to fill that BC. I will be holding on to you the whole time. You are safe. We're only in 11 foot of water, so basically you could push off the bottom and you'll be right there. Good news. This skill is only performed in confined water here. You will not be doing this at the lake. At no point in open water will anybody ever turn your air off. If they do, come tell me, and I will beat the snot out of them. Just kidding. I won't actually do that. But but they will definitely get a QMS. So nobody's going to turn your air off in open water. This is the only place we practice it. So again, I'm coming to you. We're going to put the information system in your right hand and my right hand. Other side. I will be on your right side. Other hand.
Right, you said right hand.
Or sorry, left hand.
There you go.
There we go. My right hand, your left hand. We're going to be looking at it. Air goes off. Once it gets to 0, give me the single. Air is back on. What are you going to do next?
Breathe.
Weights.
Drop this, pull weights out.
Yep. Weights out and flare. Get to the surface and inflate your BC. I will turn your air back on. You will only have a hard breath. You will not actually be out of air. And the minute you get scared or you need air, take a breath. The air will be back on before you realize what's going on. Easy enough? Next slide, please. I'm not crazy about the SSI video on this because the idea is if you are out of air, you will not take this much time. But at least it gives you a good idea. What'd you do? Oh. Yep. And flare. No. Do not hold your breath. You will exhale the entire time on your ascent. Never, ever, ever hold your breath. As you're doing this, you can exhale. You have the regulator in your mouth. So, if you need to take a breath, take a breath. You will not be judged. I will not know. I won't actually care. But always breathe. Number 1 rule of scuba is? Always breathe. Good. I only have to say it 31 more times. Next slide, please. Go down. Go down. Go down. So, tonight, we're going to assemble our equipment. Neutral dive position. Giant stride entry with scuba gear, please. We're going to do the air sharing passing the primary. We're going to do the air sharing ascent. Emergency, we're going to possibly do the emergency swimming ascent. That's an easy one to explain in the pool. Oiling inflate the BC. Controlled ascent with a buddy. Room to replace the weight system. Good news is, you're going to be dropping your weight system, so you guys will automatically have the, I call it the Miyagi style of teaching, the opportunity to remove your weights. And one of my fantastic, amazing dive guides will give you the opportunity to hand you back your weights, and you'll have the opportunity to put them back in. And we're going to try to have some playtime tonight as well. Any questions? Let's do giant stride, please. Giant stride entry. Look high, step high. What questions do you guys have? I'm really looking to get through 2 skills tonight. I would like to hit 3. The emergency swimming ascent is super, super easy. It's not rocket science. You basically look up and swim. It is. That's why I'm saving it for last. Any questions? If you guys would, if you're not changed and ready to be in the pool, go get changed and get ready in the pool. And then come back, get your gear, get it set up. If you would, guys, today, as you add weight to your BCs, please, please, please do not put it in your pockets. Please put it in the actual weight pockets, in the removable, ditchable weight pockets. If you would, if you can, please try to use soft weight today if you can as well.